Yes, the opening strains of the show from my doppelganger dominatrix, my German friend. And tonight I'll be having my multi-dimensional friend, Patricia Cori, on in about 15 minutes. I'm not sure where she is in the world right now. She's waking up at 5 a.m. to talk to me and talk with you. So I'm happy that she's making an effort to get up so early. But apparently this is not something that's uncommon for her. I don't know how many of you know Patricia and her work, but she has been working with the Syrian High Command. When I say Syrian, I don't mean those guys in the Middle East per se. We're talking Sirius, the dog star, and she's been working with the Syrian High Command for a number of years, and she's going to tell you how all of that came about, who they are, what the message is, and what it might mean for all of us in this present time and in the days to come. She'll talk about that, and she'll talk about her latest journey, which is primarily in Egypt, although she does spend some time traversing the Mayan landscape. But primarily, her latest book, Where Pharaohs Dwell, takes place in Egypt, mostly in Abydos, and primarily at the Temple of Seti I. And it's a fascinating book. It's on North Atlantic Press, and it's right out of here in Berkeley. And it's a real departure for Patricia because, before she was really working with, she was co-mingling with another intelligence and channeling that work. Here, it's more of a multi-dimensional travelogue in a lot of ways, and there's some mind-blowing things that happen to her quite often, actually. So we'll hear from her a little bit later in the show, in probably about 10 minutes, and I'll be talking to Patricia, and we'll get the lowdown on what's happening in her world. And then after that, in the second part of the show, you're welcome to call in. I'll give you the number now. If you're on the blog talk page listening to this, the call-in number should be listed, near the top of the actual page itself, or the link to the show. And that number is 347-308-8995. That's 347-308-8995. And as I speak to you, I'm speaking to you through Skype. And Skype is wonderful. When I first downloaded Skype, it had some issues for me. They've since worked out the bugs, and I've worked out my bugs with Skype. So it's very easy for me to call into this show using Skype. Now, I don't have Skype to Skype, although I think I can use it, but I use my Skype number, and I pay a very small fee for that number. And that number allows me to call into this show, and I don't get charged over and above the monthly rate, which is $2.95, to be able to talk to you. If you want to talk to me and you don't have Vonage, or you don't have Comcast or some other VoIP provider, I heartily recommend that you get Skype and pay $2.95 a month, so you can call into this show, you can call into any other show in Blog Talk Radio. And if you are somebody that lives overseas, since I'm actually calling you from, or talking to you from the United States, and Blog Talk is located in the United States, it's not a toll call for me. With Skype, you can purchase credits that are very affordable, which allows you to call overseas. So I don't get any kickbacks from Skype. I don't work for Skype, but it works for me. So I suggest if you don't have it, go get it. And Patricia, who is, I think she's in Italy right now. I could be wrong. She spends a lot of time in Italy. She'll be calling into the show via her Skype line. So that's how it works. It's real simple. Before we get to Patricia, we could talk about a few other things that are happening in the world. The Olympics are winding down, And fortunately, nothing grave outside of the horrific luge accident that took place at the beginning of the Games happened at the Olympics. If you're Canadian, your national pride was on the line today, and Sid the Kid, I'm talking about Sidney Crosby, pulled it out in overtime, beating the United States in hockey 3-2. Had you lost, I'm sorry, but you probably would have lost your national health care system along with it, and everything that makes you such wonderful people as well. But you won, and your Canadian pride is intact, and we love you down here. You're our gentle brothers to the north, gentle brothers and sisters to the north, and I'm sure that there are people in Vancouver who've had a good time at the Olympics, and I love Vancouver as a city, and hope to be back there one of these days. Some of you who know me, either from this show or my blog, or from my network on Facebook, most of you know that my father is in the final stages of liver cancer, and he's bedridden right now. And I spent the day with him today, and it's been a very interesting process. Being with someone who is essentially moving between worlds. He's describing his dreams to me, which are beginning to be quite unusual. And at one point, he said to me over the phone, he said that he feels like he's turning into a bird. And I thought that was extremely appropriate as it relates to the flight of the soul and moving from one realm of existence to another. So I was absolutely blown away when he shared that with me. He shared some other things, which I'll keep to myself, but the whole process of him leaving his body has softened him incredibly and has opened up a multi-dimensional experience for him on so many levels. And I feel very honored to be a part of what he's going through. I'm not crazy about what happened with his condition and the lack of health care that his provider did not provide for him. I don't want to really get into it in the gritty and granular details, but I can assure you that they were lost most of the time when it came to diagnosing what he had. And I have my own thoughts and feelings and opinions about what had happened with him. And I will share them at a later date. I'm not going to share it now. I'm just going to respect where he is in this process. So here in California, we started off with a lovely day. We had a lot of rain here. And last night it was a beautiful full moon. We've got a full moon at Crescent and Virgo at 10:28 this morning, Pacific Standard Time. And the sun is conjunct Jupiter in Pisces. And it's a great time to forgive a lot of people. Forgive yourself, forgive other people, and know that you are loved and guided by divine grace. That there is a larger force in your life that has a collective and an individual relationship with all of creation. I know that may be hard for you to understand, or some people out there to understand, but it's true. It's big enough, it is complex enough, it is vast enough that it does interact with us on so many levels. And one of the great theories that's emerging in modern physics is this theory of novelty and complexity. And Nassim Haramein in the Resonance Project touches on this, and there's some other folks. Richard Grossinger, who is the publisher of North Atlantic Books, has also touched on this as well. And the concept is a God/universe that is invested in novelty, in creation, imagination, and understanding itself through the complexity of our experience. And therefore, more than just invests in it, is deeply, deeply engaged in the vast complexity of how we evolve. And so we have things like love, and creativity, and awe, and wonder, and all these great things that are magnets. They're attractors to our spirit and our souls, and we move towards these experiences naturally. This is what we naturally move towards and aspire to. And as we do this, and as we take part in this wonderful dance of creation, and we allow our imagination to play, and we allow our innate gifts to come forward, and we celebrate creation, and we celebrate the divine source of all life, it becomes more enhanced and I would say quantumly enriched. So this is really my if you wanted to know what my perennial philosophy of life is, this is it. And as a result of this investment in complexity, it has an investment in a collective and personal relationship with us. I think at the end of the day, if the Earth burned out, or there was an attack by aliens, or there was an atomic war, or we got hit by a giant meteor, or a planet which was cruising across the universe came by and invaded us and wiped us all out, I mean, I think ultimately creation would learn from that. Creation, in some ways, unbiased. Okay, I'll learn from that. It will learn from that. But I think that is a cul-de-sac, and it doesn't allow for more novelty and complexity and innovation. So therefore, there are things that are built into our experience that allow us to take part in expand our awareness, expand our consciousness, and actually we can expand our consciousness. We can experience a related expansion to our consciousness. Consciousness is we can't expand our consciousness. We can expand greater into our consciousness, our awareness of it. So I don't want to get too far into this sort of psychobabble, but I do want to say that is our natural state, and our unnatural state is the synthetic and mitigated environment in which we have to live in every day, and that is everything from mass media to the crap that's in our skies, and most people know what I'm talking about, the crap that's in our water, and the crap that floats through our lives it's like the river of sticks of crap that we have to navigate through. And that is our unnatural state. And that gives us something to push against. Again, it gives us a sense of pressure. It gives us something to define ourselves against. But everything is about balance. We need balance in our lives. So the opportunity to experience novelty and complexity and merging with higher consciousness, that's all here today. Jupiter conjunct the Sun in Pisces, the Sun meeting the second Sun. So the energy's there. It's there for today, probably tomorrow. I believe the Sun moves past Jupiter at some point tomorrow, so it'll be off 1 degree. So for the next 24 hours, you can really get into a deeper state of what's possible, in a deeper state of forgiveness. And this is the word that just comes to mind: forgiveness and compassion, and melting away separation. And that's what's up. The Virgo moon is a little critical. That's okay. It opposes the Pisces sun. The Virgo moon is about humility. It's about people that have Virgo moons generally tend not to be very egotistical people. They're very hard on themselves, and it can kind of work against them. So what we have here is we have the hallmarks of humility, which places at the gateway and the portal of possibility, then merging deeper and deeper and deeper with the consciousness of oneness and love on a macro and a micro level, on a micro scale. So that's happening astrologically. It's happening right now. Venus is also conjunct Uranus. This is a great time to experience very accelerated shifts in relationship. It can be a time when you can meet new people very easily, and it can be a time where you can enter a relationship very easily as well. And the ends can be very, very graceful. It doesn't have to be hard. So that's also happening right now astrologically. So I think we have a caller on the line. This person was here last week. Let's see what happens. I'm going to just check in. Hello, are you there?
Yeah, it's me, Patricia.
Hey, Patricia, how's it going?
I'm great.
Good. So did you catch my intro there? Were you listening?
Yes, I was. I've been sitting here. Are we on the air?
We are live. You are now officially plugged into the Free Association.
Great. And can you hear me well? Because your voice is a bit muffled.
Okay, I can hear you well, and
Okay.
I think people on the other end can hear you well. They do some pretty good stuff internally with their software, so that the folks that are taking part in this can actually have a decent experience. So, well, good. Welcome. Are you in Italy right now?
Yeah, I live in Italy.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
I think there was an email exchange that you and I had a few weeks ago, and you were in Mexico. Am I right? Were you down there?
Well, yeah, I spend at least 6 months of the year traveling around this beautiful planet. I was in Baja, in Cabo San Lucas, spending time with the whales and dolphins.
So if people aren't familiar with you and your work, I just have to say that Patricia has an incredible life. I mean, she gets to go all over the world and experience these amazing places with some pretty interesting people and get to write books about it. And I love the fact that you've committed to doing this on so many levels. And I think it's a real inspiration for other people. Not that everybody has to go around the planet and activate these portals and have wonderful times, and we can all do that. But you're doing it, and I think it's incredibly cool. And maybe you could talk about when you made a choice in your life to live an authentic lifestyle, which includes your work and your travel and these experiences in these fantastic places.
Well, thank you for that. I have been I'm an old Bay Area girl, bear in mind. So, and I mean old. I'm from the late 60s, early 70s generation. Let's say that I was out there burning my broad, protesting the war in Vietnam with the best of them. And very early in my life, I became involved with metaphysics and the search for philosophies and transcendental meditation. It just kind of went on and on, so that my life took me on this path of working for spirit and devoting myself to understanding a higher purpose to this life. And years later, I'm still on that path and discovering so many incredible things. And yes, it is wonderful to be able to have made the choice to serve spirit and to free myself from so many of the shackles of life, as many of us have got to endure the daily grind. And the more I adventure, the more I discover. It's really quite an exciting life. You're right.
So it kind of goes back to what I was talking about briefly in the introduction to the show, which is the fact that you have made a choice and a commitment to explore this experience and process with yourself. And you have engaged deeply on a co-creative level with so many different facets of creation, from Wales and Baja to the Syrian High Command. And in a way, it speaks to this level of complexity and novelty and evolution on a personal level with your own life. Am I right in saying that?
Yes, I have to say that I was blessed with the gift of clairvoyance as a child, and many of us are, but then we get it beaten out of us. But early on, I was already being contacted by these little beings. I used to call them little blue people because as a child I had contact with these spirits, and they presented themselves to me as little Tinkerbell types of beings, and of course that made sense because it was something a child could deal with. So early on I was already going and talking to my mother about other realities, and she told me that once I walked into the kitchen and said, "Mom, you better understand that I'm from a parallel dimension." So, or a parallel galaxy. So she said, "I knew early on that you were going to be a very special kid, so I nurtured that in you." And thanks to her, I was free to explore these multifaceted aspects of being alive. But what really, and I mean, I studied crystal therapy, and I worked as a healer for 30 years, 25, 30 years, studied crystal healing, in fact, in the Bay Area, and became involved with that. But what really triggered me was back in 1996, I went for the first time, I went to England because I was studying color healing, and I had a dream where I was flying over Stonehenge and saw this spiral, this gigantic spiral formation next to Stonehenge, and was enthralled with this. And I heard a voice say, pay attention to this. This is a lock-on point for extra-dimensional communication, and it's going to be very important to you. And I woke up, and a series of events led me to Glastonbury, where I ended up seeing this exact same image on a poster in a bookstore, like a blown-up photograph, which I was informed was a picture of the latest crop circle, which many of us know was called the Julia set. At the time, I didn't know anything about crop circles, so I was flabbergasted to see this exact image that I had had in my dream. And I got myself into that crop circle, and when I did, I lost consciousness for 2 hours. And after that, I began to receive these communications from these beings that they identified themselves to me as speakers of the Syrian High Council. And I would like to just tell your listeners that I was no devotee of anything to do with channeling or automatic writing or anything of that nature at that time. So I was not necessarily that thrilled at first that I was being asked to serve in that way. But the messages kept coming and coming and coming, and finally I just embraced it. And years later, I'm still working with these incredible beings. I think I've got 10 books out now. So the messages are still coming through, and they're becoming more and more significant to what's happening to our lives now.
Well, it's interesting. So that was in 1996. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. I think that David Icke had a very similar experience right around the same time. And I believe he actually walked into a crop circle, and something changed in him as well, and sent him out on his journey. And then he went to, I believe, Machu Picchu, and actually got even more of a download. But I think it was right around the same time. The same thing happened to David Icke. That's incredibly fascinating.
Well, I'll tell you what, it might be that David was there too, because this crop circle heralded a whole new level of consciousness coming through these symbols. It was another vibration completely. And this formation had visitors from the Tibetan lamas, all kinds of indigenous people, priests. It was Native Americans were there, and a general feeling of people reporting that they had a dream or some kind of experience of this image, and were somehow called into it. It was reminiscent of Close Encounters of the Third Kind and the infamous rock that everybody was chiseling and visualizing. It was a sense of just, I don't even know what I'm doing here. And I do think a lot of us got downloaded because it was a time that was heralding an urgent need for humankind to start getting the information of the multidimensional kind.
I remember for myself back in 1996, that was an incredibly powerful time for me, and that's when I was doing literally about 20 tarot readings a day, and most of which were all around the country at that time. And I just felt like something really broke and opened up that year for me personally, but I could tell for other people as well. So, you put that in context, and that makes a whole lot of sense for that year in particular. Yeah.
It was definitely a very powerful time, and it was a pivotal moment in the crop circle phenomenon.
Yeah. When was the first time you really heard that voice from the Syrian High Council and you sat up and said, wait a minute, I've got to listen to this, and what do I do with it, and am I crazy? I mean, did that enter into, did you really check your consciousness at that point in your mind, say what's going on here?
Absolutely. Anyone who doesn't, anyone who starts saying they're channeling spirits or archangels and doesn't question it, in my opinion, is not fully grounded in reality. It is necessary to question what. But the problem is that clairaudience is much more dangerous from a certain point of view than clairvision, clairvoyance, because it's really it can be very dangerous. I mean, you hear voices here. They lock people up for this, right? So you can be sitting in a room and hear someone say, Pat, and it's very hard to know if someone is actually in the room or if it's coming from another dimension. So you've got to be extremely grounded when you're working on this level. Well, what happened was after I returned from the crop circle, I had the most amazing experience in there. I mean, losing consciousness for 2 hours. I've never had an experience like that before. And it took me a long time when I got home to sort out how I felt about that. About 2 weeks after I got back, one morning at 4 o'clock in the morning, which is the magic wake-up call time, I felt something like a sound that was something like staticky. And I woke up thinking, oh my God, there's a mouse in the house. And I just kind of blindly came down to the computer room. To think about it even now is just, it's funny. I came down to the computer and turned on the computer. And I put my hands on the keyboard and I went into a trance. I'm not a trance channel, but in that moment I did. And when I came out of that trance, my head was on the keyboard because I had fallen asleep, let's say. So my nose and fingers were smashed down on some of the keys. So when I came out of the trance, I looked at the screen. It was like on page 430, and it was like shmam, 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 repeated keys that just had kept repeating.
Right. Yeah.
Fortunately, I took it back up to page 1, and there I found the first 3 pages of the first book, Cosmos of Soul, which basically say, we've got a message for you.
Right.
So I was pretty surprised about that, startled, I would say. I saved the 3 pages, and the next day it happened again, only this time there was no trance. And for every day, for a year, I would be awakened at 4 and serve to receive the information that is in that book and then the many books that followed it. It has been a remarkable process for me.
Well, I discovered you back in 2002, and I found Cosmos of Soul, and then I went on to Atlantis Rising, and I had read a number of channeled works, and I'd become turned off, quite frankly, by most channeled work. I felt a lot of it was just hackney, a lot of personality, a lot of ego, and a lot of disinformation. And I ran across your books, and I think I communicated this early on with you, that I was really blown away by the clarity and the depth and the detail of the information of those 2 books. It blew me away. And if people don't know these 2 books, what they basically do is they kind of get you up to speed as to what's happening, right now. I mean, even though these books were written 4 or 5 years ago, the information is very current. It talks about, who's playing behind the scenes, what's taking place on places like the moon and in other planets. And not only that, but it gives you a really great backstory on how we got here, especially as it relates to Atlantis. And I'd love to talk to you a little bit about Atlantis and the incarnation of Tesla, and at that time, the crystal skulls, because the skulls still play a very large part and role in your work. So I want to get to the skulls eventually and bring it up to speed with where Pharaohs Dwell, but I'd love to go back in time and go to that point, Atlantis Rising, where the first incarnation of Tesla comes in and what that's all about.
Okay. Before we do that, I'd just like to make a small correction and say that actually the books are older than 4 or 5 years old.
Okay.
And it's important to say that because they are still, I mean, they're selling like they were published yesterday.
That's
and
right.
in fact,
Yeah.
have a lot to do with that because you suggested them to my publisher to be embraced by a new publisher and brought out to more people, which I'm always grateful to you for. But they came in, the Cosmos started coming in 1996. And there was a sequence of Cosmos, Atlantis Rising, and No More Secrets in a time frame that published between 2000 and 2002. So these books are, how old does that make them? 2000? About 10 years old.
10 years old, okay.
And
wow.
that's very interesting because the information is as fresh today as it was then.
Absolutely.
And a lot of the information that was prophetic then has come to be revealed or to come to pass now. So it's really exciting to see so much that is coming to light now was given to us by the Syrians 10 years ago.
Absolutely, and you're right. The material is still very fresh, and because exactly, you know, what you read in those pages is literally coming to life right now. I mean, we're seeing a lot of the machinations and, you know, what I would call, quote unquote, the dark forces being manifest before our very eyes, and it takes place within the pages, within the confines of those first 3 books. So I was really blown away personally by the experience of what was happening on the moon, and the description of what was taking place on the moon with the colonies and the animals. I mean, it literally blew my mind. And you know how there was a large number of cows who were suffering, you know, on the moon as a result of the space colonization that was taking place, and just mind-bending stuff. But I really want to get back to this piece around Atlantis because I think this is really where it all starts, and would give people kind of a real grounding in sort of the bigger picture and ultimately where you're taking your work with Pharaohs.
Okay. Where do you want to start? There's quite a lot of material to cover.
Yeah, I'm really interested in the first incarnation of Tesla because that knocked me right out of my socks when I read that, and his role, the role that he played in that lifetime in Atlantis, particularly opening up the multidimensional portals, and of course the crystal skulls.
Well, the Syrians say that before you make a great hero out of Tesla, be aware that actually he doesn't have such a glorious history, and that he was a walk-in well, he came in the first time in human form during the era of the last generation of Atlantis. And he was an alien presence then. So he walked in, and some people are going to find this very unpleasant to hear, but he walked in as a priest of the Dark Brotherhood. He was not working for the light in that lifetime. The council referred to him as Akhenazet, the keeper of the energy, and he was pivotal in the process of abuse of energy that happened in the last generation of Atlantis. He was an alchemist, the chief alchemist. And this is interesting because even though in this generation we seem to be immortalizing him as the great father of free energy, and I mean there are Tesla clubs all over the place, but people seem to have a short memory. Tesla actually started out with all the best intentions. Or I mean, he was unquestionably a genius. But when he got frustrated because he wasn't given the funding to do his research and his exploration, and he got turned down by the corporate world, the military, the U.S. military said, "Don't be bothered, just come with us, little guy, and we'll set you up." So he worked for the United States military. And he was doing some pretty tricky stuff. So he had a very, let's say, bag of karma that he did not resolve in this lifetime, according to the council.
Right. And he actually, when he was in Atlantis, he was very pivotal in terms of opening up some pretty nasty energy during that time. And how much of a hand did he have ultimately in the destruction of Atlantis? Was he really integral in that incarnation?
Yes, he was, because what was happening, the Atlanteans were working with what they called mind light generators, and they had learned how to use the human mind to create, like solar energy. They could generate the entire cities by using collected conscious vibration gathered and stored in these generators, which were a combination of different kinds of crystal, huge crystal spheres, and technology which I can't explain because it hasn't been explained to me in its entirety from a technological point of view. But in essence, people gathered all over the country at certain hours of the day and meditated for the highest good, and meditated to bring that energy into manifestation to be utilized for energy, free energy. And the dark priesthood said, this is nice. And he was the chief alchemist. When he walked into that lifetime, he walked in to serve the dark force. So he was one of the primary priests of the Dark Brotherhood, and he was the chief alchemist of Atlantis. And they enslaved people so that is this sounding, are you with me on this?
Oh yeah, I'm totally with you.
Okay. They transmuted this beautiful collection of collective energy of using thought and consciousness for the highest good, and they started to enslave people, forcing them into certain mindset. It was the first true mind control manipulation program on this earth.
Mm-hmm.
So he was very pivotal in it all coming down, because the process of civilization is we reach our apexes and then we destroy everything, and then we pick ourselves back up and we climb toward the mountaintop again, and when we've reached that pivotal moment, we start to decline again. But the decline of Atlantis was most definitely, according to the council, activated by the misuse of that kind of power.
Right. And now,
he was, excuse me for just, I just wanted to finish that thought. He was, in a certain sense, according to the council, a sort of, let's call it an antichrist, for lack of a better term, of ancient terms.
Mm-hmm.
Very dark energy. And, we do know that there have been some very unexplainable things that were developed, like even some of the nasty things we've got going on today are children of Tesla technology.
Right. Absolutely. I was just going to chime in before you just finished off that little passage, that we're dealing with HAARP now, and HAARP obviously is an offshoot of Tesla-based technology, and we still don't know the full ramifications of HAARP. I'm sure you have some understanding of it from the Syrian High Council perspective. We know that there's weather modification involved, and there's more than likely mood modification involved. And ultimately, there's probably mind modification involved, and this resonates and echoes backwards towards Atlantis and towards Tesla's technology in this lifetime. What does the Syrian High Council have to say about HAARP?
Well, the Syrians, first of all, talked about HAARP before it was cranked up, so they gave us some insights into what would happen when it was on full power, which it now is. And their information about HAARP is that, yes, it is a child of Teslan technology, and that it is not only directed at, well, it's much more concerned with the big global picture than it is with individuals. So HAARP has not been designed necessarily as a mind control tool against humanity. It is a mind control tool against planet Earth.
Mm-hmm.
HAARP is it's an ultimate destruction machine. And it is basically a network of antennas that produce extremely low ELF pressure waves that are being shot into the atmosphere, the ionosphere, and the magnetosphere, and are also being pulsed into the Earth. In fact, there's a big debate going on now. Are these earthquakes products of HAARP pulsation?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of talk. I wrote about this on my website, and obviously there's a lot of chatter on the internet regarding the Haiti quake, which was strange in so many ways, particularly around how centrally located it was and how very few people in the Dominican Republic actually felt the quake. There was no tidal wave, or there was no aftershock or ripple effect in the surrounding areas. It was a very strange quake in terms of its actual geophysical phenomenon. Now, the quake in Chile did produce tidal waves. They had a tidal wave alert here in the West Coast, and they had a tidal wave alert in Hawaii, and they did have some tidal wave action. I'm not sure, I haven't delved into the Chile quake that much, but certainly, there's enough evidence out there to suggest that what happened in Haiti was, at the very least, very strange and unusual and unprecedented in some ways for that area.
Well, follow the money line, my dear.
Yep.
I mean, if you look at you start with the tsunami in Asia, right?
Yep.
That was immediately followed within hours that the ex-president, Clinton, was appointed. He was supposed to be the enemy of the Bush family, and yet George Bush appointed him and his father as the goodwill ambassadors to handle the money, right?
Right.
I say, well, okay, that's pretty convenient. So off they went. Thank you very much. We'll take it from here. And they showed up in their shorts, and nobody got any money. I mean, first of all, they went into, I can't think of the name of the Aceh province, where they had wanted to put military because of the oil refineries and had always been rejected. But bam, after the tsunami, America was in, and it's still in. All this money from all over the world, who ended up handling that money? George Bush and Clinton.
Right.
Where is that money?
That's a very good question.
Who calculates that money?
Right.
I can tell you something. I used to work for the Thailand tourism office, and I was there 2 weeks before it happened, and I went down, I had to deal with the fallout to tourism after it happened, and when we went back in a few months later, and I started talking to some of the hoteliers and some of the shop owners, and they said, Patricia, I don't know where all that money is, but it is not coming here. Who monitors this money, right? So, okay, jump to New Orleans. Big catastrophe, very strange, Hurricane 5, right out of the movie set of The Day After Tomorrow kind of event. Who gets called in? George Bush is senior and Clinton again.
That's right.
We'll have that money. Thank you very much. Just spend it here. Who monitors this money? Okay. Now we've got Haiti. The Americans are like, guess who's coming this time?
It's Bill Clinton. Hello. Hi, I'm here. It's me again.
Mr. Obama, the change president, who does he call? Not Ghostbusters. He called George Bush, his arch enemy, and Clinton.
Yeah.
All right? And once again, they're going to handle the relief and the money and whatever, which is billions and billions and billions. And this time, George Bush being George says, no, I'm not planning to go down there because Bill will take care of that. Did you know that?
That's right. Well, Bill was he was elected. He was selected to be the ambassador to Haiti, right? Prior to the earthquake.
Very convenient. All right, so both of them, so the point is that George Bush, not being your basic humanitarian, doesn't even feel like putting on a show of going down there. So he's just like, no, I'll stay here and handle the money, and old Bill will go down.
Right.
Okay.
Not surprising.
So now we have three very suspicious events in which money is the first thing on the table.
Yeah.
Now, what's happened in Chile is very interesting because the president, the newly elected female president, said, thanks, but no thanks. We don't need any help down here. Are you aware of that?
No, this is all new. This is good information.
And she said yesterday on television, I really appreciate it, but we want to try to handle this ourselves. We're prepared for this kind of emergency, and we're going to do our best to take care of this internally. And I think she wants a hands-off policy of intervention. And I think that this may not have been a deliberate one. I think it may be a reaction to the huge blast that was created for Haiti.
That's my sense. Because the title is the tsunami effect. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And what's fascinating about Katrina as well, just like Haiti, which was so concentrated, right? I mean, you had a small area that had a devastating impact in a small area. Katrina, if you go to the Ninth Ward, it is just a disaster zone, but yet you could go to the French Quarter and still have a cocktail. You know, I mean, that's how it was. And again, it's very specific areas that are focused and concentrated in terms of the energy and the impact of the catastrophe.
Well, people plenty of people came forward in New Orleans and said they heard blasts at the diga. I'm thinking of the Italian word, and I'm not getting the English word.
Yeah, they had
the dikes.
The dikes. They heard explosions. Right.
So, you know, we don't have to spell it out for people that are listening. You get the message loud and clear, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there was actually a gunfight as well between, I believe it was the New Orleans Sheriff's Department and some unnamed, quote-unquote, people at that same dike that got blown up. There was you can go on the internet and search this out. There was a shootout there, which got buried, of course, in all of the news and the tragedy and people being flown out of the swamp waters and helicopters and so on. But there's a lot that happened in New Orleans that never really came to light, and I'm sure that there was a lot in Haiti that we'll never know about as well.
That's right. Well, the thing is, though, that what matters here is that we know when the Syrian revelations first came out, the conspiracy theory people were few and far between, and there was so much denial. But now it's kind of out. I mean, how conspiracy is it if it's so very much in our faces? So there's been a shift. I mean, now that these things are happening, it's people know about HAARP, and I'm proud to say that Atlantis Rising was one of the books that introduced HAARP to the public. Another great book about HAARP is a book called Angels Don't Play This HAARP by Nick Begich.
Right.
So, but what we need to do now is focus on, okay, so we know this, it's dark. And so what do we do? Because humanity is a crossroad here. How do we continue to work as spirit warriors? How do we turn our lives into that highest, making sense of our life at that highest vibration, and not to get completely dragged down by the increasingly dark force that is manipulating the planet? This is the challenge that lies before us.
So what does the Syrian High Council say about what's happening right now, and what is our best line of defense, for lack of a better term, in terms of being able to live our lives in a way that are authentic and sovereign and healthy for the most part?
Well, the basic thread between through all of the books is primarily that we look at what we're dealing with, and then we understand that until we get into fearlessness, well, let me backtrack. We look at what's going on, and we understand that this is school, and that we are immortal beings. And so all of the things that we're looking at now in this path through the physical dimension are training, a density that we will be in maybe more lifetimes if we choose to struggle with it, or training for the next step as we climb up the spiral. And so what they are trying to help us understand is that we are immortal beings and that we don't die. So what if the planet blows up? What if? I mean, people are, particularly the Western societies, have never made peace with death because we don't plan for it, we don't think about it, we don't practice passage like some of the more refined Eastern societies or some of the ancient societies like the Mayans and the Egyptians or the Tibetans. But the truth is, we all go through the death process. And yet there are people and civilizations that have lived for the wonder of that process, and then there are the rest of us who are terrorized by the idea of it. So the message from the Council is, your liberation comes in your understanding of your own immortality. And it is time for you now to understand it so that you can let go of the fear and know that whether you go out at 85 or 60, or whether you go out in a nuclear holocaust or from cancer or in your sleep, you're going out. And it's very exciting because the loving way, the nurturing way that they teach us about this helps us to embrace the idea that no matter what is playing out in this realm, it doesn't matter. None of it matters at the soul level.
Right. Well, that
I know, yeah. It's a little bit hard to get your teeth around, but
no, not really. Not really. I mean, I get it. I mean, I understand it. You know, I'm going through the process of death right now with my father, who's in the final stages of liver cancer, and so, you know, I see this as being a profound opening in my life and in his life as well. And there's a timelessness that I'm experiencing with him. So, and of course, it distills everything else and clarifies everything else in one's life. It's changed my life tremendously, even in the last 30 days. And this sense of fearlessness that you talk about, it could be, you know, an embrace of love and an embrace of one's own sense of personal destiny, whatever that is. That's become very important to me, which is one of the reasons why I'm talking to you right now. It's, you know, I moved forward on this whole idea around the radio show and programming it because I saw what was happening with my father, and I said, this is important. This is important to me. So, no, it makes total sense to me, at least personally, from my perspective.
Well, I would like to comfort you and say that the most difficult thing that I've ever had to deal with in my life was my mother's passing. She was my true soulmate. I mean, soulmate knows no gender. And when she passed, I thought I would go crazy. And I consulted a psychic because I couldn't reach her. I was so blocked emotionally that I couldn't reach her. And this woman was my mother. I mean, she absolutely said so many precision things that only my mother would know. And my mom said, honey, you of all people, you are not walking your talk. You are the one who told me, because my mother believed she was an atheist. And I used to put my finger in her face and say, you are going to get over to the other side and you're going to say my daughter was right. This is real.
Yeah.
Okay? And I put my finger out like dogmatically and say that, and she'd say, whatever, honey, if it humors you, great, but I'm into this life, it's now, and that's it. Okay, so when I went to the psychic in tears, I just couldn't get around it. She looked at me, and not ever having met my mother. In fact, when I called her, I was crying, and she said, your mother's already in touch with me, please come over. So I sat down with her, and I said, my mother. And she goes, yes, she's here, hold on. And she sticks out her finger, and she says, my daughter was right.
Oh, my God.
I almost fell off the chair. I'm not an easy person to shock and awe.
Right.
She said, my daughter was right. This is real. The exact word.
Wow.
And
That's amazing.
Said, where are you? Where are you? She said, I'm here. And I'll tell you what, girl, you are not walking your talk. You of all people, you're the one who told me, and so you know that I can't go forward until you let go of the pain. And I will be with you as long as you need me. But please understand that I don't get to go play. You should see what's here. I go, what's there? And they have coffee. Because my mom and I were coffee drinkers, and we delighted in spending those idle hours drinking coffee together. And she said, my dad's here, and it's like Disneyland. There's a beautiful park, and I can't go because I'm here with your pain.
Right.
So I was able to do the ultimate sacrifice, which was to overcome my own need and let her go to the light. So I tell you this because it's so very real to have that kind of confirmation from someone that you love so much, saying, listen, baby, I'm here. And she even said, I hear your implorations in the kitchen, but I can't, it's not going to get me back. I used to go in the kitchen and say, please come back, because my mom redesigned my kitchen for me, and so that was our hangout place. Everything was precise. Yeah. So how wonderful to have had that validation.
Yeah, that's a great story.
To know that even though it's so painful for us, it seems to be better over there than it is over here.
Yeah, I can't vouch for that, but I'd have to say that they probably have a much better perspective at this point.
Yeah, they seem to be having a little bit more fun, judging from the spirits that come through, talk about the light and all the wonder there. Yeah. And the exciting thing is that we are headed toward this as a planetary body. One of the themes of the Syrian revelations is that the Earth itself is going to ascend out of this density, despite the illusion that it's about to just all implode. The Earth herself is about to ascend out of 3D.
Interesting. Very interesting. So I think that that's a great segue to talk about where Pharaohs dwell, because there are moments in where Pharaohs dwell that you ascend out of 3D, and you have, I would call this book a multi-dimensional travel log.
I love that.
Yeah, you can use that. Go right ahead.
I will. I'm going to write it down.
Yeah, it's an amazing account. In the book, Patricia refers to herself as a female Indiana Jones, and it's not far off the mark. I mean, she travels from Maya land to Egypt and has the most incredible experiences, just jaw-dropping experiences in some of the most profound places on the planet. And I want to get into this book a little bit, and I want you to talk about how the book itself is in some ways a reflection of walking your talk.
Well, thank you for that. This is the first time I've ever done a book that is not channeled material, as you mentioned earlier in the introduction. And it was a big leap of faith for me and for my publisher, because I had never, as a channel, I've never had to think about writing the book. I've never had to imagine an ending and a beginning. It's just I sit down and get the information and it becomes a book. So this book was born from the desire to finally share some of my personal experience, because I try my best to take myself out of the formula as a teacher, as a channel, as a spiritual guide, and empower the reader, the student of the work, whatever work I'm bringing through, with their ability to get the direct contact. So I've tried to always be on guard with the human ego. So I agree with you when you were talking about channeled material often being full of ego. I can't stand it. Yeah. And so I'm very meticulous and careful about it, and the council warned, as soon as your ego gets in the way, forget it, you're shut down. Yeah. So I toiled about this because do I really want to put myself out there, my personal experiences, which are really incredible. I mean, my life is full of the most outrageous things. And in fact, I remember when I first heard from you, you said that Patricia's new fictional book, and I corrected you and said there's nothing fictional about this book. I mean, it reads like fiction, but it's all true. Right. So, but how was it born was your question, yeah?
Yeah, well, in some ways, I mean, you kind of answered it, because, what really strikes me about this book is that you have entered into your personality, and your personality comes through in this book. I mean, it's you. It's not channeled material.
That's right.
This is Patricia, and when you shared that story with me about your mother saying walk your talk, I mean, literally, this is how I see this book. I mean, it is a personal experience of walking your talk.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
The book is born from an experience that I had 25 years ago when I had a past life regression, and in this regression, I was taken to a scene where this is how the book starts. I was spinning on a wheel. I get off the wheel. I'm standing in front of what looks like a mine shaft. And the regressionist is saying, look again, and bam, I'm looking at glyphs, but I was still ignorant of Egypt, at least consciously, and I didn't necessarily recognize what these glyphs were, but I said, it looks like, wait a minute, it's not a mine shaft, it looks like a tomb, it looks like an Egyptian tomb. And it kept morphing between a shaft and a tomb until finally I did recognize that it was a tomb, and he invited me to go in. And what happens to me in this regression is that I get someone closes me into this tomb. And I went through suffocation. I almost died in this regression because I couldn't breathe. And I was screaming to get out. And I could hear the regressionist saying, who are you? Who closed the door on you? Who are you? What is your name? And I gave him a name. And I was crying, and I was bleeding. My hands were dripping blood. And I was crying out this name, Matkara, Matkara, why have you forsaken me? And I died. In the regression, I experienced my own death. And in fact, he told me later that he almost didn't, he thought he might really lose me, because he couldn't get me to come out of this state. So that's how the book starts, with me going through this regression and reliving being buried alive in a tomb in Egypt. And all of the experiences in the book, all are very mystical and completely metaphysical, but they're all on a path of rediscovering ancient lives and ancient wisdom based on that first process of dying.
Well, it's a great read, and there are two characters in the book who are very pivotal to your story. One exists, three characters actually. One exists in a prior lifetime, and that's Om Seti, and the other character that exists in this lifetime is Amir, who is your guide. And in a weird way, Amir is like a mirror, right? I mean, in a lot of ways, He's your reflection in Egypt, and the whole thing really starts with the story of Seti. And I'd like for you to talk about that a little bit, and how that again is also a reflection of your own experience in Egypt. It's fascinating how the two stories sort of weave together and breathe together throughout the entire book.
Well, Seti, for those people who don't know of her, I mean, there is a lot of consciousness now about her. Seti was a real-life person. She was a British woman who, well, I think let's say she was born around 1910, maybe. I don't remember the dates right now. But as a young girl, 14, 15, she was born to a very proper British, upper-crust, maybe not wealthy, but very stuffy family, very Victorian mentality. And she started to have experiences with spirit coming to her bed. And the spirit was a pharaoh. And she was having these weird dreams and eventually experiencing sexual encounter with this Egyptian pharaoh who was identifying himself to her as the pharaoh Seti I. And her life took this course of having this relationship with this ghost, basically. And then she went to the Egyptian Museum. She learned, and she was shocked to find out that she could read a lot of the glyphs and things that were in the museum. And the curator of the Egyptian Museum sector of the British Museum took her under his wing. She got so involved in the whole Egyptian thing that she finally went to Egypt and went to find this pharaoh. And the temple of Pharaoh Seti I is in Abydos, which is the spiritual heart of Egypt. And it is still intact, and it is the most amazing place, I think, on the planet. It is a portal, without question. I mean, there's a story in the book of what happens to me because I get myself locked up in the temple in the dark.
It's a great story. A great story.
It's a true story. They're all true stories. And but the reason why I'm focusing on that is because after I read the story about Seti, I said I have to go to this Abydos place. This woman, I had such an affinity for her story. Not that I had ever had sex with a pharaoh in ghost form, but it rang so true to me. And this was such an eccentric person. I mean, she left England. She went to Egypt. She got hired by the Egyptian Antiquities Office. Unheard of at the time. They hired this British woman, and she was blowing everybody away because she could read scripts and glyphs that nobody could read. She eventually got herself transferred out to this little village of Abydos, which at the time was so remote and never saw a foreigner. This little blonde girl, and she went there and dedicated her life to restoring Pharaoh Seti's temple. And she died there. She lived to be near his spirit. It's a really beautiful story.
So the book is called In Search of Seti, right? Yeah.
Me?
I'm sorry. The book that she wrote is called In Search. Well, she didn't write it. It was Jonathan Cott who wrote the book. Right. It's In Search of Seti, and yes. Her name is Dorothy Eady. And you actually find this book. It jumps out at you, right? I mean, you're at you're waiting for it's either a flight or a bus, and there's all these sort of pieces of literature, and this book really jumps out at you, and that's really kind of the jumping off point. Am I right?
Yeah. Well, I was coming back from Egypt from a prior trip, and I was at the airport, and I was waiting for my flight, and I saw this In Search of Seti. What's this? And I got the book and I started to read it, and I almost didn't take my flight home because I said, wait a minute, this is where I gotta be. Yeah. But I was like, Pat, you have a life, you have a job, you got to get on that plane and go home. But I knew that I would come back soon because I had to. I really follow all the signs that are laid before me. And I'm a very impulsive person, and I do the most insane things. So I almost just forgot the flight and leaped to Omseti, to Abydos, but I didn't. I waited. And then I got myself there later. And this person, Amir, is a real person. In fact, I'm bringing a group of people now on the 10th of March. I've got a spiritual group in Abydos coming with me to Egypt, and the people are so excited because they're going to meet Amir. So who is Amir? Amir is a man who I met immediately when I went to Abydos and realized he was the guardian, the true guardian of the temple. And I asked around when I first got there if anyone had ever heard of Omseti, and the waiters, there's a little cafeteria area, and he said, wait here. And up comes this beautiful man, regal man, in his traditional, he only wears the flowing robe. He's really an old soul. And he said, I knew Omseti. And I said, can you tell me about her? So that's how I met him. And he turns out to be absolutely someone I've had past life with. And I've had life in that temple as well.
Yeah.
So the story of Amir is very important to the book, and it's tied in with the story of Omseti, which many people have read about.
Yeah, it's amazing what comes through the book, what a kind and gentle guide he was on so many levels, from the most mundane in terms of making you aware of the authorities and what the penalties were for being in the temple after hours, to on a more esoteric level saying, are you ready to really understand the mysteries of this? And it's fascinating how he plays the role between both of those worlds.
Yeah, and plus, I remember when I told him I want to be in the temple at night, and he said, Patricia, it's dangerous. And I said, why? He said, because there are spirits. And I said, that's why I want to go. And so he said, but people are afraid. I said, I'm not afraid of spirits. I prefer spirits to people. Let me go. So we had to construct this scene where, I mean, we both could have gone to jail. That's totally illegal.
Yeah.
And I got locked inside this temple in darkness for 5 hours, this big, foreboding temple. It was very challenging. And of course, as you read in the book, I had the most magnificent experience there.
Yeah. It's tremendous. And I don't really want to share too much about it because, I mean,
yeah, I don't either.
It's a big part of the book, and I think people really need to experience it in the context of the book. But it's very powerful. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the how do you pronounce it? The Syrian? The Syrian?
The Syrian.
The Syrian. Now, this is a really fascinating part of your journey, and I got to tell you, I was blown away by the picture of the Syrian, and then the picture of Da Vinci's Last Supper, and then I turned the page, and Richard, I don't know if Richard was really, involved in this in terms of its, the layout, but then the crop circle, which absolutely, mirrors, everything you've laid out with the Assyrian, and also the connection between the Last Supper. This is one of these synchronicities in the book that's really fascinating.
Yeah, no, Richard wasn't part of that. This is all my discovery, because when I first laid eyes on the Osirian, I said, oh my God, wait a minute here. Am I looking at the Last Supper? Background to the Last Supper? And then, being a person who goes to the crop circles every year, I went, oh my God! Talk about a revelation. I visualized it. I recognized it. And then I went back and dug up the photo that was provided by Lucy Kringle and went, this is all the same information. So I'm glad that impacted you, because for me that was a real breakthrough, aha moment.
Oh, it's absolutely astounding. Just to give people kind of a picture, so Patricia captured a photograph of the Assyrian, which is it's almost like a courtyard and an entrance, and there are columns on each side, and then right next to it, on the page next to it, there's a picture of the Last Supper. And when you look at the two of them together, they are mirror images of one another. And then you fast forward and you go to page 194, just before she enters the shaft of Osiris. Here's this crop circle was that in 2007? And it is almost a mirror image of the Syrian. It's phenomenal. I mean, it's one of these synchronicities that if it happened to me in my life, I mean, it would just, it just blow my mind. And I'm sure it did that to you at that time as well.
Yeah, and I have to say that unfortunately the images are in black and white, so the reproduction isn't all that great. Because in color, you really, I mean, when we're looking at the color full picture, you get an even more profound sense of how these are mirrors of each other. It's pretty stunning. For me, it was a big revelation. And then you see also in the images where I show how the crystal sphere has the doorways in it too.
That's amazing. That is absolutely amazing that you're able to capture that and take it. So what Patricia's referring to is just a few pages after it's actually one page after the reproduction or the photo of the Last Supper. She's holding a crystal ball that you use this to scribe, don't you? I mean, this is what you use to, and inside the crystal ball there is an image of what it looks like the side of the Syrian with the columns. Am I right in that? And this is what I'm seeing here in this crystal ball. And you capture it. It's absolutely fascinating how you're able to capture that photographically, and that's another mind-bending synchronicity on this journey.
I know it is. Do you have the picture in front of you?
I do. I'm looking at it right now.
All right. So do you see on the left-hand side, you see this white figure kind of leaning in at almost a 45-degree angle?
I do. Absolutely.
That's the god Osiris.
Wow.
That is what really blew me away.
You
can see it as clear as day. That's a full figure standing there.
No, it's absolutely clear. Yeah, that is.
I'll tell you what. I have had a wonderful, wonderful lifetime with crystals, and I've got crystal skulls, and I've worked with vocal crystals, and I mean I'm a crystal woman, but none of them has ever been like this crystal sphere. It is utterly remarkable. I have things appear in this sphere, and they stay. Crystal temple, but like, I mean, and for me to be able to say, whoa, let me see if I can catch that on film, and to be able to photograph an image, it's one thing to scry into a crystal because you're seeing it in your third eye. It's another thing when the crystal manifests it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And to be able to capture it on film. I mean, that's incredible. You know, I mean, it's you look at this and you say, well, somebody photoshopped this. But
no way.
This is not photoshopping. Yeah, fantastic stuff. So I'm going to give out the number here. You and I have been chatting on for the majority of the show. There's 40 minutes left, and the number is 347-308-8995. That's 347-308-8995. If you want to call in and you want to ask Patricia some questions about this book or her work or the Syrian High Council or crystals, this would be a great time. She's a phenomenal resource. She takes groups of people all over the world to sacred sites and to really plunge deeper into the mystery of being in this third dimensional experience. So I heartily advise and recommend that you give her a call right now if you want to ask her some questions. I wanted to ask you a question. At the end of all of this, at the end of the journey, at the end of the book, there's a famous phrase that the Hopis have, and the phrase is, "Does it grow corn?" At the end of the day, what does it mean? Does it feed people? For you, I know on a personal experience, it fed you in a very deep way. But how would you say, for people that read this book, how does it grow corn from them? What can they learn and glean from this book that they can apply to their personal lives?
Well, I can tell you the feedback that I'm getting from people, and that is a commonality of comments, which basically is that they've been on an incredible journey with me. They feel like they're with me in the experience, and that for some of them, it's a very cathartic, emotional experience because they feel that it's opening doorways for them to rediscover their own past lives and to understand the process better and to be more receptive to whatever they're carrying through, whatever karma they've brought through and they know they need to work on. So a lot of people have reported having very deep emotional experiences with the book, lots of joy, but also deep introspection, and I'm very honored to serve in that way.
So has it allowed them in their own way and walking their own path, affirming, because a few weeks ago I talked to Ellis C. Taylor, who is a person that has these very strange and unexplainable experiences between worlds. And one of the things that Ellis really gives people an opportunity to experience is their own sense of permission with, hey, my life is far out, strange things happen to me, I have all these synchronicities, I'm living in multiple lifetimes, and great, somebody else is too. I mean, have you had people come to you and say, you know what, thank you for doing this, it validates my own path in some ways?
Oh, all the time. All the time. And you know, I'm getting so many new reactions from people, like gratitude for me finally sharing a personal introduction to me at a personal level, and they just enjoy. I mean, there are people that are just loving the adventure of this story and this experience. There are others who are fascinated with the deep consideration of alternative viewpoints on Egypt and Egyptian mysticism and the Egyptian timeline, which is another theme of the book, pushing back the time of standard Egyptology to the time of the Phoenicians. So it has a lot of stuff woven into one book, a lot of different themes, but they are woven together in this story, in this book. I hate to call it a story because it really is a collection of experiences more than a story.
Yeah, definitely. It's more of a narrative than a story per se.
What does it evoke in you, Robert, as the reader?
Well, what it evoked in me was that, first of all, I loved your sense of adventure and the sense of permission that you gave yourself. I mean, to me, there's a lot of courage in the book. You know, I mean, when you go into that temple for 5 hours, you know, and you're only supposed to be there for an hour, I mean, that's pretty gutsy, you know. And then as you began to spend more time in Abydos, you began to, you know, gain sort of a reputation in some ways as being fearless. Yeah. And to me, that's one of the big pieces for me that I got out of that book, was that you were fearless and you were going to go in there and you were going to test your mettle against your fear and your sense of, you know, expectations and your ego, and I thought that was terrific. So that to me was one of the things that spoke to me from the book. The other piece that spoke to me was I really felt like you had a real respect for Amir and the local culture as well. And I did not feel as though you were on some sort of a spiritual pilgrimage that was all about aggrandizement. I felt like there was always a real sense of respect for the surroundings. And so those two things, for me, were big pieces of the book.
Well, I'm glad to hear you say that, because wherever I go in humility, and I go to learn. I have my ego over in the corner, and my approach to life is to go in as a child, be innocent, go to learn. And people pick that up, and they embrace me, and they open doors that I just can't believe get opened for me. I mean, even in Mexico, I went to Palenque because I was invited by the tourist office there because the director of tourism read my book and he loved it, so he invited me on all expenses paid, which was nice. And when he set up appointments for me, and when I went to Palenque, he said, just tell the director what you want to see, and she'll do her best to show you. And I said, well, I'd love to go into the tomb of Cacao. And he said, Patricia, not even I have been in there. That has been closed for 20 years. And he said, nobody goes in. I said, okay. He said, but, anything else, you ask her, and she'll help you. So I sit down in front of this woman. She looks in my eyes, and she says, what would you like to see? And I said, well, and I just looked at her, and she said, would you like to go into the tomb? I said, what tomb would that be? She said, Cacao. She goes, I don't even know why I'm asking you this, but I feel that I have to let you go in. And I didn't even ask her. And so I'm blessed with this, and I think it has to do a lot with being playful, being innocent, and being humble. And the doors just open. And I recommend this to everyone, no matter where you go. Someone once told me, when you're talking, you're not learning. And so I try to be receptive, and people pick it up and they love it. And
it's the true spirit of travel, to be able to be open and humble to your experiences, and because you're going in really without a lot of grounding, without a network, without support, and if you have the wrong attitude, or you have the wrong perception of people, you can get in real trouble traveling. I mean, things can go sideways pretty quickly. So
especially in places like Egypt.
Yeah, absolutely. So the spirit of humility, which for me, humility translates into openness. That's how I experience humility. And so while you're open, doors open for you, it seems like.
Yeah, I'll tell you a little story. I always bring people everywhere on these programs, and I am a shaman, so I have approach when I enter a sacred site. And there's always a guardian, and it's usually birds. So one of the times I brought people to the Syrian, and everybody wanted to get in there, and they were talking. I always tell people, when you're approaching a sacred site, be in silence. What you've got to learn is that the approaching is just as important, if not more, as the being. So you guys are walking into a temple that is maybe 20,000 years old, and you're talking about, oh, you forgot the camera, and blah, 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 and batteries, and wasn't it way cool at the shop? And I mean, you're walking up to the Holy of Holies. Normal citizens didn't get to go to these places. Only priests and virginal priestesses and pharaohs went into these temples. Have some respect. So we get up to the Syrian, and people are chattering, and I'm like an old mother. I mean, I'm like, could you please honor this space? And see, the local people, they watch me. So I go, please, if ever you've been silent, please be in silence now. So we walk up to the Syrian, and I stop them because there's this huge raven sitting up in the there's a bench up on the hill that looks down over the Syrian, and there are always guards there with submachine guns. Because the Egyptians have plenty of submachine guns around tourist sites just to supposedly protect the people, right? So there were no guards there. But there was this gigantic raven. It was like 5 times, screeching. And people were talking, and I stopped them. And the energy from the people was like, what's wrong with Patricia? When are we going to get into the Syrian? And I tried to without saying, because shamans don't tell you, you've got to be sensitive enough to listen and to observe. I tried to let them understand about this bird. This bird was saying, you are not going in this temple without permission. It was screaming, and it was sitting in the guard. How much more do you need as far as symbols go? So what did I do? I did, and the group looked at me like I was deranged, and this bird screeched back at me again, and I screeched back again 5 times. And it screeched back now the 3rd time, 5 times, and I, in English, human language, said, I am not even thinking of going into that temple without your permission. And this giant bird, like a raven, which is like Merlin, swooped down over my group and flew up off into the horizon. And I said to the group, okay, now we can enter. So having respect for what you're doing and sensitivity for the spirit beings, the guardians of the temple, this is what puts you in touch with the real experience. I mean, anyone can go to the temple. It's another thing to go into the energy of these places. And that requires humility, sensitivity, silence, and observation.
One of the things that happens to you in the book, which I think is very interesting and speaks to what you're talking about, is I believe you're are you in the Syrian when this bas relief of Ma'at begins to emerge from the wall and you see it, and you have this very strong connection with it, but it's one of these images of Ma'at that seems to move in and out of the structural space of the temple. And Amir had seen it once before, and I believe the innkeepers, Kevin, had seen it once before, but it always seems to appear in different places, which is fascinating. And,
yes.
And you must have been obviously in the right space to see this emerge from the interior of the temple.
Well, this is the temple of Seti I, which is above the Osirian. And this temple is the one that I got locked into.
Right.
So very strange things happen in that temple because it really is, I mean, we use these terms, portal and vortex, we use these terms all the time, but this is one of the most obvious portals on the planet. I mean, things shift around in there. The people talk about images walking off the walls, gods walking off the walls and moving around at night. That's why Amir didn't want me to go in, because he said the spirits step out of the walls at night and move around. And the local people are scared to death. But yes, there was, I sat there one of the times I went, and I sat in one of the inner chambers and admired this amazing sculpture on the wall, which was Maat, which is integral to my story, my discovery of the past life. And she's, the Pharaoh Seti is holding her in his hand. And then she's holding a smaller version of herself in her hand. And then that self is got to get a smaller image, and finally that one a smaller one. So you've got something like Maat to the 6th degree.
Right.
And I sat there and admired it like for hours because it was so intricate and powerful. And I probably was meditating without realizing it, because I'm not a person who will sit in an art gallery for 5 hours and look at one thing.
Mm-hmm.
So the story evolved that when Kevin asked me about it, and we all agreed that it was in a different place. And he said, I saw it once and I've never been able to see it again. And I said, well, I just saw it. Let's go back and look. And it wasn't there.
That's fascinating. Hey, you know what, Patricia? I think we might have a caller that wants to talk to you. So let's see what's happening here. Hello, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, hi. Who am I speaking with?
Hi, this is Joanna. I was wondering if you're doing readings tonight.
Oh, unfortunately, I'm not. I do them once a month, and it's usually the last Sunday of the month. Although this Sunday I wanted to get Patricia on, but if you want to follow the show and listen, I'll be doing some readings probably at the end of March, and I'll let people know on my website. Do you want to ask Patricia a question at all while you're on the phone with her and me?
No, I just joined, so
okay.
I'm sorry, I don't have any questions at the moment.
Okay, well, go to my website and I'll let you know when I'll be doing live readings. And you can also find out more about Patricia's work while you're there, okay?
Great. Thank you so much.
Okay, thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.
last week I was doing readings for people on the air. It was actually quite popular. I had probably about 3/4 of my show filled with callers, and and I guess she found out about it and wanted a quick little reading. So I wanted to ask you a question about Zahi Hawass. A very interesting character, and I was first introduced to him way back in the day when Art Bell would talk to him occasionally on his show. And I never met him, but I know a lot of people that have interacted with him. And I wanted to get your take on him and wondered what you think he really knows in terms of actual knowledge with the temples and the pyramid.
Well, that would be a lot of conjecture because I've never met the man, and there's all kinds of rumors about him being in secret societies and things like that.
Right.
What I would like to just say that he is one privileged human being because he can go anywhere he wants, in any tunnel, in any temple, anytime, anywhere. So I do know that the wisdom and the information of the plateau in Egypt is being doled out to us slowly, just like technology is, you know?
Right.
And I think that he may very well have found the Hall of Records, but he wouldn't know what to do with it if he found it, because according to the council, this is not going to be a gilded chamber with gold and artifacts. It is going to be a space that only the enlightened can activate.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think he's an enlightened man, but he sure has his finger on the pulse as to everything that has to do with archaeology in that country, and sure also that he knows a lot of the secrets of the real purpose of some of these buildings. So, but I don't personally have much of a resonance with this man, and I've never met him. He hates anything to do with alternative approaches to Egyptology, and he's got a big ego. As he's kind of like the king. He's a very, very powerful man.
Yeah,
so,
I mean the term that comes to mind when I think about him is gatekeeper. On so many different levels. Because he has amazing access, and if you want to do something in any of the temples, you basically, well, unless of course you're somebody like yourself who can sort of navigate through the nooks and the crannies. I mean, you have to go through him literally to get any kind of traction for any tangible amount of time in the sacred sites in Egypt. So. Yeah.
Well, yeah, you do. I mean, he gets a big amount of money.
Yeah.
Let's say his office gets a lot of money. So when I bring groups and we get special time, like I plan private time inside the pyramid, I have to pay a large sum of money for that time to Zahi Hawass's office. But when I'm on my own, I have ways of getting around things. But it's very risky. Like sitting inside that temple for 5 hours, I could have been jailed for that. That's illegal. And Zahi Hawass is the deciding person, or as George Bush would say, the decider.
Right, I'm the decider.
So
oh my God.
He's God out there on the plateau, and most of the Egyptians really resent him.
Yeah.
But he holds all the keys.
I gotta say,
spiritual man, I don't think so.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of control that Zahi Hawass seems to be in control of. Let's say.
Well, he's a very rich man. If that helps explain the situation. Yeah,
it does. It's funny. You tickled my memory for a moment when you brought up the I'm the decider, and in a weird way, I don't miss the politics. Trust me. I mean, the politics were horrific and ostentatiously horrific. But in a weird way, I kind of miss George Bush because he was so surreal.
I hear you.
Yeah, he was so weird, so surreal. You never knew what was going to come out of his mouth. You never knew what truth he would, sort of babble in plain sight, so everybody could pick. I mean, it was just in a weird way, it was like the best of reality TV was his presidency.
Well, I used to tell people, and in my workshop, try to love George Bush, and they would laugh at me, and I'd say, he is bad enough to wake people up. I mean,
Absolutely.
You've got slicksters like Clinton, and everybody was just pacified to death, and he was doing the same stuff that George was, but George Bush was just so evil Knievel, and at the same time, such a bumbling fool, but he managed to put through the agendas that he was given, right? So he wasn't that much of a fool, but he was definitely entertaining.
Yeah, definitely, in a very strange and surreal way. I mean, you're absolutely right.
For the President of the United States to say, well, I'm the decider, among the myriad other things that he came out with, but decider was one of my favorites.
You brought up a great point. I mean, if you look at what happened during, and I've told people this on my blog and, in various discussions, if you look at what happened under Clinton's watch, I mean, it was horrific. I mean, he signed GATT into being, he signed NAFTA into being, he got involved in the Balkans. I mean, we were in a war in the Balkans. Americans died there. He began the raids over Iraq. We had Waco under Clinton. We have Randy Weaver under Clinton. We had.
And do you remember when he bombed Serbia, and then when he bombed the Chinese embassy, and supposedly by mistake, and when the media asked him how could that have happened, he said, "Well, unfortunately, we were working with old maps."
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I just, people don't remember that. I said, do you remember Clinton saying the reason why the United States bombed the embassy was because, quote, we were working with old maps? But he was so slick, he got away with this stuff.
Yeah, and also at that time, it was the beginning of the first bubble cycle, and the Fed had lowered its rates, and I was in Silicon Valley at the time, and there was literally trillions of dollars going through Silicon Valley, and all these startups, and people were from 1997 to 2000. There was a 3-year period there where people were just narcoticized by VC money. And, the thrill of making a lot of money, either starting a company or being a part of a tech stock, and, that really entranced a lot of people. And as soon as that went to hell, of course, they had the second bubble, which got Bush through the first 2 years of his presidency, which was the real estate bubble. And then when that burst, well, here we are,
Yeah.
So
I do
what's
miss George.
In a weird way. So what's next for you? You're taking people to Egypt. Is that next?
I'm taking people on the 10th of March. We're going to be there for 12 days through the equinox. And I've got a lot of stuff going on with my publisher. I've just got a new book coming out in May called Beyond the Matrix, which is a series of conversations with some of the bright minds of our times, and these are conversations I've had in interviews with these people. Mm-hmm. That comes out in May. And right now I'm working on a new book yet. It's called Before We Leave You, Messages from the Great Whales and the Dolphin Beings. Mm. And this is one of the reasons why I'm out with the dolphins and whales all the time, getting close to them, and I'm getting channeled messages from them through their ascended masters who sit on the Syrian High Council. Excuse me.
Interesting. I don't know.
Of whales and dolphins on the Syrian Council.
I don't know if you saw this bit of news, but there was an orca whale who killed its trainer a couple days ago. Just absolutely mind-blowing event. And it's one of those events where you just have to stop and look at it and say, what's the real meaning here? There's something deeper that's going on than just this tragic, this tragedy that happened at a SeaWorld park.
Well, these great beings are meant to be swimming in the open ocean, not in these little bathtubs, and they're
right.
just exasperated.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you look at the tanks that they hold all of those orcas in, it is criminal.
Yeah.
These people should be put up for murder, not the whale.
Yeah. Yeah.
These beautiful creatures need to be out in the ocean singing and swimming and dancing and celebrating, not locked up in prison for the entertainment of the humans, Homo sapiens. It's really criminal.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm
very dedicated to fighting what's happening with every means possible. I hate to use the word fighting, but let's say to illuminating people to the need for the human race to get over this fascination with circus entertainment of wild animals and letting them be free to live. At least let's let the animals be free. If we can't free our civilization, let us let the animals live out their lives in their natural habitat.
Yeah. Well, one of the theories that I heard around our own accelerated evolution in our next step, our quantum experience, was really related to the animals, and that we could only go as far as our relationship and treatment of the animals themselves. And if we wanted to get to this next phase of our experience of being human, then we really had to be much more conscious with our relationship with animals and shift that completely. That was integral.
Well, I'll drink to that. I mean, I still can't believe that people don't understand. I'm a strict vegetarian and I have been for 28 years. People don't understand that eating animal flesh is bringing suffering into their body. So you bring in just from the simple act of eating a hamburger is violating animals, and all the way up to cruelty to animals. But that act, eating animal flesh is keeping the bloodlust in the human psyche, because we are ingesting all of that anxiety, suffering, adrenaline. It's just unnatural for us to aspire to being light beings and evolved beings and still sitting down and enjoying a nice bloody steak. So I do agree with that, and I think that the time has come for human beings to really examine their relationship with the animal kingdom and the plant kingdom and the mineral kingdom. The nature of the beast at the moment, the human nature generally across the planet is, we are the master race and nothing else matters. It's all here for our use. And that is a big mistake.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, that gets back to the whole concept around humility and being open to participation with these other realms from a very different perspective than we now have, which is hierarchical, to say the least.
Yeah, I sometimes when I meet people, they say to me, what are you so fanatic about a vegetarian for? Animals were put here for us to eat. And I can't believe that people still think that way. But to each his moment of awareness and breakthrough. I'm not a preacher, but I do think it's very important now that people become more aware that the animal, first of all, so many animals are in extinction now.
Yeah.
More and more species. Every day we're losing species. We're losing tigers. They're almost extinct, and yet I recently ran across an image of about 25 tigers that were skin and bones. They were just in a cement like container, being starved to death so that the Chinese can use their bones to make some exotic wine. 25 tigers.
Oh my God.
This is the human race. There's something wrong with this picture.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Patricia, at the end of the day, when 80% of us are gone, and most of the animals are gone, they can just clone the animals again, and they'll just come back, right? I mean, what's to worry? They're sitting on the keys, to creation. So go ahead, wipe out a few species. Once everybody's gone, we'll just bring them back anyway. I mean, in some ways, there's that kind of mentality that's going on here, right?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Well, what I tell these people is, you're right. Let's just hope that when the aliens come, they don't decide that they should eat humans.
Yeah, well, yeah. So.
Sounds facetious, but I really mean it. I mean, we have this manifest destiny attitude about living things, and so won't it be just a laugh on us if alien races start infiltrating planet Earth and saying, let's just use these guys for food.
Right.
That would be our karmic lesson,
Yeah, to serve man, from the old was Outer Limits episode. Was that right, or was it the? I think it's the Outer Limits. Yeah.
But really, we are so anesthetized to what it means to kill an animal for food that the horror that anyone would want to eat us is beyond any kind of anything but science fiction, and yet we carve into these helpless animals, we skin them alive, we do every possible thing to them for whatever purposes, and we eat them. So why wouldn't another species be interested in eating us? It's the food chain. Could happen.
Absolutely. And it might have already happened, and we may not be all that aware of it. So you're going to Egypt, and you've got your tour in Egypt, and you've got some books coming out. Your website is SyrianRevelations.net, and you can people can find out about all of your books and all of your forthcoming spiritual odysseys. Is that right, from the website?
Yes, it's pretty up to date all the time. So they can find out what I'm up to, and if they're interested in joining me, they can get all that information on my site.
Well, it's been a long time coming. But you know what? Hey, Patricia, we've got one caller here at the end of the show. About 6 minutes left. You want to take a quick question?
Sure.
Okay.
I was just curious. Hi, my name is Veronica.
Hi, Veronica.
Hi, I was just curious, just listening to your show and talking about, food and the ritual of killing, et cetera, and I definitely sympathize with your position. But I guess I also look at the Native American culture and look at the balance that they have between the earth and themselves and think that we could take more of a middle ground approach.
That's a very valid comment, and I would like to just say to you that I have many friends who are Native Americans and shamans, and their attitude about eating meat is that when they kill an animal to eat it, they go through a whole ritual of honoring the spirit of the animal.
Right.
And also that process is of directly encountering the animal. I mean, at least I don't know. Maybe your modern day Indians are, eating burgers at Big Mac, if we can call that meat. But in the tradition, they would confront the animal. They would ask permission of the animal. They would have an exchange of energy with the animal. So it's another discussion in a way.
Okay. Well, it's very interesting.
I agree with that perception that you've brought forward, and I appreciate it. And, again, it's kind of splitting hairs. What is cruelty? And some people will say to me, well, Patricia, even plants have souls. And, that's why I said I don't really preach about this. Any more than as trying to convince people to be vegetarian or not is not what I'm trying to say. I just think it's time for us to be more aware of how we perceive our relationship with animals, and that includes eating them.
Well, yeah, and it's interesting because you look at the death ritual around the Native American culture and food, and you also, when you were talking earlier about the death ritual and how we do not celebrate that as a culture, especially in this country, I just find it interesting that the native peoples of this country definitely celebrated that, and it's kind of like our heritage that we need to get back to.
That's right. I agree with that completely. They had the honor of the animal. The process of ingesting the animal was to bring that energy into the medicine of the animal, the soul of the animal, into their being. That was a different time. I don't know if Native Americans are still honoring in that way. But I can tell you this, a shaman that I work with told me, Patricia, I will never eat meat again, because the argument of what it means in our commercialized society, buying it over the counter, is unacceptable. It's no longer acceptable. To be so desensitized to the suffering of the animal is no longer, I can't say that this is my heritage. That is gone, and this is unacceptable.
You're right.
Well, thank you, Veronica, for calling in. We got to wrap things up here. We got about 3 minutes left in the show, but
thank you, Veronica.
Thanks for calling. Great question. So that was a great point that she brought up, and I was just thinking that maybe in a modern sense, what we could do, Patricia, is let's say you're going to McDonald's, right, and you go to the drive-up, and before you ordered, they would show you a film of a particular animal that you were about to order. They'd show you that animal getting slaughtered, and you'd have to watch that film before you'd order a hamburger. And by doing that, you would somehow vicariously participate in the experience of that animal losing its life. And then if you wanted to, you could get the hamburger after that. What do you think of that?
It's so much easier to eat a nice broccoli souffle with some beautiful salad.
So anyway, that's my twisted mind at work. Patricia, it's been a long time in coming. I'm glad that we've had this extended chat. We've bounced off each other with emails for a couple of years now, and I was really grateful that Richard decided to publish your work, and I'm glad that you've got more books coming out through North Atlantic. I think it's a great press for you, and I just wish you nothing but the best.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I really am grateful to you for presenting me to Richard, a wonderful, ethical publisher, and it has been a long time coming. Thank you so much for having me on.
You're welcome, and I look forward to more adventures from the female Indiana Jones and our multi-dimensional travel guide, Patricia Cori. You take care. All right?
I promise. I'll have more.
All right. Thanks, Patricia.
Thank you. Thanks to all your listeners.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Well, that was Patricia Cori, and I hope if you listen to this that you've enjoyed the last 2 hours. And if you haven't listened to this live, you'll be able to hear this on my blog talk player as a stream. And if not as a stream, you can certainly download this as a podcast. It'll play as an MP3 on your most likely iTunes player. Thanks for tuning in. This has been Robert Phoenix, and you have taken a journey to the far side on Free Association Radio. Until next week, use your mind to discern what's real and keep your heart open to what's possible. Take care.